because I think people have been so great about their comments. They've been um, substantive, important, really excellent information that has been born of real experience. And I so appreciate it. So I hope in this last hour, half hour, we can continue that. All right, so this session is on technology. Um, Providing assistance, increased protection, increased communication is what we want to do. Some of the reforms that were brought up on the last um, meeting. I think everyone, it doesn't look like I have any phone numbers, so everyone can read under the NEDA reforms what some of the things that we've talked about. So why don't we just dive in there? Vince, I'm sorry, I'm going to point at you because some of the things that you've said in past sessions have been really, in my mind, this is what's important to me. This is what I'm talking about. Is there any way you could just kick this off?
Certainly. Thank you. Well, yes, I mean, based on my experience conducting investigations, supervising investigations for 27 years at the state, and then working as a consultant in the field, and sometimes doing investigations and continuing to work with investigative units at provider agencies, I'm really seeing the importance of cameras for one thing. The cameras to me are essential to counter the biggest challenge that we've always faced conducting investigations is that the people who are victims or potential victims in our cases often can't tell us what happened. They're we're relying, so without cameras you're relying on testimony of other people there, the records. But I have been kind of disturbed about how the picture changes when you actually review the video and you can see and hear what actually happened. Now, sometimes it actually exonerates people, which I think it's also a way to protect staff that when sometimes allegations are made by anybody that aren't true. And you can see that's not what really happened. But at the same time, things are uncovered that would not have been known if the cameras weren't there. And plus other things are discovered. I believe, and I think some of the agencies that are providing accreditation to providers and things like that advocate the use. If you have cameras, use them proactively. In other words, don't just use them after an investigation or an incident, but use them as a management tool to actually and to not only catch problems, but catch people being good and highlight excellent performance. So I've become a strong advocate for cameras, and I really support the resurrection of the Billy Cray law. I don't know why that fell apart, but I've yet to hear from families that aren't supportive of it. But the other thing is I really support is the electronic records. I think paper records should be a thing of the past. They can be, you can't read them, they get falsified, they disappear. People forget to fill them out, and then there's no accountability. Like, well, who was supposed to do it this shift or that shift? The agencies that do have electronic records, and some do, you can not only can you have access to them and save them, you can see, well, who was supposed to be there, who was supposed to be filling that out. Managers can use that and say, well, did this just go right on their computer and see, well, did the staff fill out the records from the night before? And sharing of information between shifts and that kind of thing. It's the 21st century way of doing things. It's how all my medical information is on a patient portal, and it's like I don't see why our field in DDD and IDD shouldn't catch up. Um, and also, there are other systems out there that are electronic. For example, another big problem is, and again, sometimes this is because of just extreme fatigue, and sometimes for other reasons, people are sleeping on the overnight shifts, and there are electronic systems for people to check in with a voice print on a regular basis, so that you to help ensure that aside from other methods or rounding, there could be virtual rounding by management of homes, make sure nobody's sleeping on the couch, but also checking in and say, okay, I have to stay awake because every 2 hours I have to check in on this voice system, and you know and do things that should be getting done on the overnight shift, which you know won't get done if you're sleeping. So
Yeah,
that's
I
that's
agree with
kind of
everything you've just
that's my
said.
viewpoint. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a residential license system that has that's very with settings all over the place. They are one agency can have homes in North Bergen County and then another home in Camden. And it's really hard to supervise all these settings without dependence on without some use. And I withdraw the dependence because you can't completely depend on technology. But to use that as a way of supervising, of training, of being able to verify, or as you said in another session, gather more information about any particular issue. I think it's very important. But it's not only cameras. Telemedicine is very important. I know that, at an initial meeting, having it be done as telemedicine may not be the best choice, but as an ongoing service, and especially in providing immediate assistance to a particular circumstance, telemedicine is very important. And sharing medical records. My daughter had an issue. She came home one day, she immediately had two seizures. So I called the house and said, let's check the Mars. And they said, gee, no one's at the house. We will literally have to send someone to the house to open it up, to open the book. That's not good. That's not timely. That's not best practices. You should be able to do what you do in a hospital and just go to the nearest computer and open the record and see what's happening. So I think investment in technology to overcome all these impediments presented by a very disparate, I don't know if that's really the right word, a spread out system is really important. Kate, your turn. You have your hand up,
Oh,
Kate.
sorry. I'm so slow with unmuting. One of the things that I wanted to note, actually two things with the technology section. In terms of needed reforms, just because I know that there have been some fantastic webinars on this over the past year, is about safety and in online spaces, because that could also be a tool for financial victimization or like other types of abuse. So I think that kind of lumping that into the reforms area is also important. And I don't necessarily know if this would fall under smart technology, but like better insight into technology specific to medical conditions. So, for example, use of seizure detection apps. Like we have a problem right now where somebody that we care for with Lennox Gusteau, the agency has reported no seizures in like 8 months, and I'm like, you didn't cure it. You're missing them. So like figuring out, okay, is there another way? Like how can we use technology not just for safety, but also like for health as well?
That's really good. Kyoko, I have lost the little thing that tells me whose hand is up.
Okay, so next is Laura.
Okay.
Hi. Um, so I had a couple of points. I think technology, I know we've talked a lot about medical records and stuff like that, but and while I absolutely agree Mars should be some sort of a technology-based system, also having one that has parent access, right? Again, for the same reasons that somebody who just mentioned, like somebody shouldn't have to go to the house to see if a med was given. I should be able to check. I have two children, right? On both of them, I can go to log into my CVS portal or whatever it is and look to see if my kids refilled their medication because I'm paying for it, right? For my son, whose pharmacy is controlled by the group home, I can't tell if they've refilled all of his medications. I have no access. I can go to the house and physically look to see if they're there periodically. I do, but not all family members are nearby or can do that. So parents should have the right to be able to have access to those pharmacy records to see if medications are being refilled, as well as seeing if they're being given, i.e. the Mars every day. I think that would help communication and a lot of the medical problems we see where medications aren't given for a period of time, individuals get ill. Try to be much that would help really prevent things of, hey, I didn't see this refilled. This looks like this could be a problem.
That is a really good point. Something just happened with my girl where her behaviors were suddenly spiked, and the group home told me that she was 5 seconds away from pulling a fire alarm at her job site. And when I really looked into it, somewhere along the line, her dosage of Prozac had been changed in the last week, which was really bizarre. I didn't know anything about it, but yeah, a parent portal, really good idea. Is it just Kathy or Kathy? Do you want to?
Sorry, I had something else to
Oh,
add.
I'm
So,
sorry. I'm sorry.
okay.
Okay.
So the other thing is, I am fortunate. My son has some really amazing staff. They are, and on the positive side of this, they often will take him out places and they will send me pictures of places he went, which is I love. But having family members have access to some sort of, whether it's a texting or chat feature with staff, with frontline staff, so that they can communicate what time they're coming. If there's, hey, staff, is there something that maybe I normally provide that they're running low on? And you can let me know before I come. I know the group home provides a majority of things, but some of our kids have specialty needs and, parents might be providing or helping with some of that stuff. And then I think the other thing that I feel gets missed a lot is a lot of our children, as we've said, are nonverbal. And some of them have used computers, iPads to learn to communicate. Some do it really well, some do it less well, but many of them use it. Again, like it's taken time at my son's current home to like keep his devices charged, keep them accessible. But for some individuals whose really only communication might be a communication device, the staff need to be trained on either how to use that device, how to maintain it, how to charge it, what happens when it dies, does it have to be turned back on? We've had situations where my son literally had behaviors because he accidentally turned the volume off on his iPad and none of the staff knew how to turn the volume back up for him. And it's like, I literally had to go to the home and at night, and it's just like, this is relatively easy. Like, okay, not everyone has an iPhone or an iPad. And so, but again, like just recognizing that some of these needs are simple and can be trained. So again, it's part of that whole technology, not just in protection, but also technology and a lot of the younger or individuals nowadays who are starting to move into group homes are far more technically savvy sometimes than their caregivers. And that's really a problem sometimes because they might need some assistance and the caregivers can't always provide it.
That is a really excellent point that I had not really thought of because, yeah, they need to meet the needs of the individual. And I guess I assumed that they would know, but no, that's not the case. Can we go on to Kathy or is there?
Yes, thank you. I'm
Okay.
done.
Okay.
Oh,
Kathy.
well, actually, I was going to say very much the same thing about assistive technology. I think, in the schools, there's a lot of emphasis put on the use of the technology, the generalization of the technology. There isn't a good way to communicate those skills when somebody ages out and they're going on, whether it's to the supports program or to a provider managed setting, it doesn't matter. But I think it takes a lot of time and prep to make sure that technology is used effectively as the individual needs it to be used. And I think you can't um, forget the low tech options. Things like picture schedules, things like picture communication boards that an individual might use. I think it's very easy to put those things along the wayside. So I think that's something that has to be emphasized. And I think, the agencies don't really have, I have yet to find an agency that has the capacity to train their staff to do that effectively. The second thing that I wanted to say is, in terms of cameras in the home, we had an incident at my son's home where the 3 to 11 staff left, both of them, before the 11 to 7 staff came in. And when the 11 to 7 staff came in, they reported it immediately. What I demanded after that were video doorbells on all exits, as a way of the agency is not in favor of cameras in the home, and that was a bigger battle. And his agency is a very large agency, but I demanded and got the video doorbells for a couple of reasons. We would have been able to see them leaving because there was a lot of uncertainty about how long they actually were alone. But the second part of it is you can also see who's coming and going in that house. And I think that's really important for a couple of reasons. First of all, you don't want people in the house that don't belong there. And second of all, many of our individuals have elopement behaviors, and it would be helpful to be able to see what direction or what, if they hadn't been noticed to be gone for a while, how long they've been gone. I think those are safeguards, and the Ring doorbell doesn't infringe on anybody's privacy, I don't believe, in terms of being in the house and seeing the types of things that are happening in the house. So I do think that the video doorbells are a safeguard that can be very helpful.
I agree. I went to see a house on Friday, and in the middle of the presentation, there was a little computerized voice. The front door is open. I like that, especially when you have kids that elope. It's nice.
Yeah, I think I can honestly say, as someone who ran a middle and high school for kids with autism, elopement was my greatest fear. And you need to have really good safeguards and procedures in place if there is a known
Yeah.
eloper. And also understand that anybody can all of a sudden decide to bolt, and be very, very cognizant of that.
Yeah. Kyoko, who's next?
Matt Wheeler.
Okay.
Hi. I just want to say I totally agree with that. I think the video doorbells should be a mandatory. I mean, you can't go anywhere without having a Ring camera on the front of any house or any business. So I think that is amazing. And I also want to go back to the cameras in the homes, and I agree with what everyone said. I don't really understand why it's stalled. There's so many positives to this, and if there is a choice, meaning if there are some self-advocates who see it as a privacy issue, they can opt out. But for guardians of those who really can't speak for themselves, it really is a huge safety proponent that has to be in there. And I think that perhaps some of the stall has to do with who owns the technology. I'm not certain of that, but I suspect. And so I would like, for us to look at what are the standards, in the environment, like what do nursing homes do, what do elder, what do health daycares do with that? Who owns it? Who can see it? When is it looked at? I like the idea of proactively looking at it for training purposes, not just when there's an incident. But I think all of those things, there's no difference with the vulnerability of our adults who have severe or profound issues. It's the same as having an infant. It's the same as having an elder person who is not, doesn't have the capacity any longer. So I would like that to be looked at as well. It's the owning and the properties as well as the choice of the camera. But I want to pivot a little bit with technology. And, we did talk about this in our recommendations for the 5-year plan, but I think, when we go back to accountability and transparency of incidences for abuse and neglect, it would be amazing if there could be a shared database of these incidences that included the Ombudsman for Disabilities Office with perhaps the outside agency, be it a justice center, be it a specific part of the Attorney General's office with trained staff, and the DDD or the OPIA, whoever is the one who's now putting it in a database. Because I've spoken to Paul's office several times, do you have a shared, do you know everything that comes in? Do you yourself keep a database within the Ombudsman office? And, due to lack of staff and, the way these calls come in, there's really no good way that we are measuring any of this, right? And so the only data we have is from the hidden home investigational articles. And so, again, I'm sure that's only a piece of what's truly out there. And if we want to hold people accountable and we want to show transparency, we don't have to have the details, but a shared place where it's really collected and we can point to how big of an issue it is and make systematic changes. You have to know what the data is.
Patricia, excellent points. I think, Kathy, I see you, but I think I saw Lisa also, but Kyoko, you have a
Yes.
better.
Yeah, Lisa is next.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I recently purchased for my mother, one of those necklaces that can kind of detect when you're falling, or if you fall, you could press a button on it. But there's a portal that goes along with it that gives a lot of other information besides the fact that she's fallen. It could tell you how many steps she's taken, and it can tell you, and things like that. So even technology like that could be useful because there could be change in activity patterns of a person where maybe they're not getting up a lot that day, or maybe they're getting up moving more than they normally do, which could tell you some maybe behavioral changes, or maybe that they're not feeling well to the parent. If a parent could have access to stuff like that, even if there's no camera, those changes um, can alert a parent that maybe something different is going on, or maybe that they're sitting around more than they usually do. Maybe they're not feeling well and they're sitting on the couch or they're laying in bed. And so even like technologies that don't involve cameras but can tell you maybe about their movements might be something that might be useful.
That is really good. I've been thinking about getting a watch for my girl, but she won't wear it, but maybe something that hangs there. I think that is really good information. Kathy, back to
I
you,
just wanted
Kathy.
to make one more point about cameras. Again, just from my experience in the school, cameras can also be protective to the staff. And I think that's a really important point. I think, we had an incident in school where a parent was accusing staff of putting marks on her daughter. And she was very specific as to when it happened. We pulled the video, and in the end, it showed that, yes, there were marks, but it didn't happen in school. So whether it happened on the bus or wherever it happened, but it didn't happen in school. And I think, it could be a situation where one staff is saying the other staff did something wrong. The camera will tell the story and can be protective to the staff as well. And I think sometimes staff don't think of it in those terms. They think of it as being invasive, and Big Brother is watching, and it's going to get them in trouble, and people aren't going to like what they're doing. I think that point has to be driven home, that it can be protective to them as well.
That's excellent point. One other possible application of technology is with the providers. One of the things that just drives me crazy every month is, my girl lives in a group home and there are a variety of checks that come out of her Social Security funds to pay for her residence. Unfortunately, Maddie is a disabled adult child, so the amount of Social Security is, higher than I guess the normal 700. I'm not sure what it is, but it does come close to the $2,000 asset limit. Well, the agency does not cash their checks on time. They tend to hold on to a bunch and the checks aren't cashed until, they've got a bunch and it's 2 to 3 weeks after the date. And by that point, my daughter's bank balances are heading up over 2,000. So I'm always a little bit, and yeah, I find it a little weird that agencies don't want to cash their revenues, on a more timely basis. Being able to capture revenues 2 or 3 weeks earlier every month can make a significant difference in how they manage their funds. So, if we can get providers to embrace technology, even on an operational level, um, just direct deposit the money is I think would be really helpful for them. But the other thing that I wanted to share was my daughter does have seizures, and I wanted some technology for her night seizures because I've always had a camera in her bedroom to monitor. Didn't sleep for 30 years, but I wanted staff to be able to um, see what if she was having a seizure, and their response was always no. Staff will just go in every hour or every 2 hours. Oh, that doesn't make any sense. The kid's never going to get a good night's sleep, and she's going to have more seizures. And they said, well, the technology we recommend is a seizure mattress, something that you slip in underneath her mattress. So if it shakes, you know that she's having a seizure. But what if she's not in the bed when she has a seizure? So ultimately, we had to go through the state human rights committee. We did end up saying, yeah, she needs a ring camera in her room. But I think people have to be the state and agencies have to be a little more open-minded about what technology is available and appropriate. Um,
Jody,
yes.
Paula's hand is up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see him. Okay, go ahead. I would have rambled on if I knew. Go ahead, Paula.
I don't know if I am ignorant to this, but where Sydney lives, they have said that we are not allowed to have cameras and
Yeah.
that it is a law that there is like you cannot have a camera. And they've actually had parents either remove cameras from their children's, they are apartments, remove them from apartments, or they've had to go to lawyers and get documents drawn up that they can have a camera.
Mm.
Or, I mean, does it depend on the type of residence that they're in?
No, well, the generally you can have cameras in common areas if that is the policy of the agency and if all residents are aware of it. But if one person, one resident, doesn't want it, then you have to figure out how to make sure that that person's human rights are not infringed upon. I got an exception because Maddie does have a medical disorder that needs to be tended to immediately. So that is an exception, and I probably shouldn't have shared that a as an example because it's very. I know two other people who've had an exception. One woman whose daughter vomits, um, and to the point where she'll pass out because it's that bad. And another person who has nightly seizures. But that is an unusual thing. But the cameras in general, public areas, um, I don't think is a problem. In fact, when PPMU published their last set of guidances for their provider manuals, they actually had a section on guidance for cameras. So, I don't think that's a problem.
But also, what about in her own apartment? I mean, my daughter is deaf. She can't talk. She can't hear. So, if I want to keep an eye on what's going on in her apartment, I don't feel that they should tell me that I can't do that. And yet that's what they're doing. I wanted to mention we are not allowed, we were told specifically, we cannot text, we cannot email, we cannot have any contact directly with any of the support staff. The
Oh,
the only way that I know what's going on with my daughter, I insisted and I put it in her ISP that I receive a nightly call at 9:30 p.m. by the DSP to fill me in on her day, how she's feeling, just general parental questions that we would have and we want to know about the child. But we are not allowed to reach out to their staff.
Yeah, I see that, and it is an infringement. I think the general opinion is that it's an infringement on the privacy of the DSP to be able to have their um, personal phone number out there. I get that. One of the things, Kathy, I see your hand up. I'll go right to you as soon as I'm done here. One of the things that I trained my daughter in is use, I don't know if this is possible, but I trained her to use her phone. She calls me and FaceTimes me endlessly. So I had this little peek into like what's happening in her life. I don't think even the DSPs understand that. Yep, I can see what's going on because she's FaceTiming me again.
Well, I understand that, and she's capable. My daughter is not
Uh,
capable of doing that.
uh,
And just as a side note, they tell us to call the main phone in the office, which probably 99% of the time no one answers.
um,
So you have no one to reach. My daughter has a landline. I will call that first always, but then reach out and then sometimes then I get chastised for calling the next person in line. Why is no one answering the phone? So it's a vicious cycle. And I wanted to say one other thing about using an assisted device. My daughter has an iPad, but when I say that the DSP needs training to use the iPad, a lot of them they're like, well, you really have a lot of expectations. It's there's a lot of meeting of a brick wall, I find, that rather than them wanting to be there, open to what you need and what you're suggesting, they're being resistant.
yeah, I'm really sorry, but we are already past the 3:20. Kathy, can you do a minute? Can you limit your comments to a minute? Because we are already past 3:20.
Well, I just want to say to Paula, join the group home mom club and we should have lunch. Um, because way back, this whole thing with cameras, I had asked years and years ago, and they said it was against their policy. And then, that policies that we never get, they just state it's their policy. But Dottie, the AG would actually, if you suspect abuse and neglect in a nursing home, they will supply a camera, and you don't have
Yes,
to tell the nursing home to do this. So again,
I
the
understand.
power of the provider and the lack of parity that the rights of our individuals and the rights of us to other licensed facilities. And again, that's my sum up. There's no parity, and our population is really discriminated against in many ways. So
Okay, let's go back to Mercedes to close this, and I'm sorry I took 3 minutes of your time.
That's okay. I think we can do this because I think everyone that's still here is ready to take a
Wrap up.
break and go back to some other level of business. So such an incredible conversation. It's been, highly informative. It's been exhilarating, exhausting at the same time. As we wrap up, I think the first thing to say is thank you to everyone who's participated. And if anybody watches this recording and they were here earlier, thank you if you're already gone. This is a very time-consuming day that we weren't even sure as we were planning this kind of how it would go. We did our best to get, enough time and attention in each of the areas. Um, so we knew it would be difficult, and you all really surpassed our expectations. So thank you. As we kind of circle back to the beginning of the day when we talked about the need, to collaborate, the need to work together, look at the ways that while multiple things are happening across multiple organizations, that we bring strength in the volume and the level of participation that collectively we can take, because I think we all agree that we're more powerful as a unified voice. Again, want to thank the state agency representatives, providers, support coordinators. I saw a comment in the chat from a direct support professional. We all have to do this together, and we can do it in a way that respects everyone, but holds everyone's feet to the fire and accountable to their role and their responsibility. So we will summarize the day. That's the New Jersey Council on Developmental Disabilities, the Office of the Ombudsman, the Regional Family Support Planning Council. We'll summarize the day. We will do our best to share all the resources that were captured in the chat. And I also made a note to look at a tool that can be used to access this work in real time, so that people can look at it when they're available to look at it and continue the conversation and elaborating where necessary. We would like to expand upon that two-page blueprint that you've all seen now, that we've been showing on the screen all day, with more details, with more of the updates that you've all contributed, and begin to look at action areas that got a little bit more granular today in the conversations. And then begin a document that really addresses those needed reforms. I said it in the beginning, I'll say it again now. None of this happens overnight, yet with a plan in front of us, and I think of the blueprint like the blueprint when my house was being built, and you've got the front page that just shows what it's gonna look like on the pretty, but then as you can keep turning the pages, you get deeper and deeper, and then when you get all the way in the back, there's things that you don't even really understand anymore. It's all the schematics, and it's all the where the plugs are going to go and what the ampage is and all that. But that's how granular I think that we're going to need to be, and that's going to be a big task. We've got almost 60 people still part of this conversation. We had in the mid 80s earlier in the day. So we're hoping that all of you are still with us and together, where we all can agree, yes, let's push this issue forward. It's a great group. Our goal is that we'll organize the data again. We'll look at how we can create a document that can be delivered to the next administration, which we will have, a new governor in January, and whoever is in that role, they will have selected additional teams, state representatives to work with. So we have a lot of work to do just because of that changeover as well. But we're here. We're ready to take these steps with all of you and appreciate everything that you convey, the grace in which you convey it. You all brought me to tears a couple of times today because I understand the passion in your voice and the need for things to change. And we are collectively going to do everything that we can to bring about that change. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for being part of this. And we look forward to that next conversation. You will hear from us until you tell us to stop communicating. Anyone else on the team have anything, the planning team have anything to add?
No, thanks. I mean,
Thank you.
the level of expertise that people came with was astonishing. It was such a perceptive group.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to end now. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully you'll find some energy in all the discussions to push you through. Take care, everyone.